Just like the Heat, when it comes to Locked On culture, we're all about accountability. So we're looking at some of our bold predictions from before the season started to see just how right or wrong we actually were. Plus, the latest on Joel Embiid and an upcoming matchup versus the reigning MVP. And are the Heat getting healthy at just the right time? We break it all down and much more on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com. Joining me as always, longtime NBA reporter David Ramil. However you're tuning in, on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Also, as a reminder, this week, Friday night, April 5th, we are holding a Locked On Heat watch party for the Heat's game in Houston at the Taurus in Coconut Grove. 2-for-1 draft beers, 2-for-1 house liquors, a few surprise offers. Again, April 5th at the Taurus in Coconut Grove. Heat Rockets. Game starts at 8 o'clock. We can't wait to see you there. Got a bunch of stuff to get into today. We got some big NBA news that Joel Embiid could return this week. We're going to revisit our bold preseason predictions to see how wrong we were later on in the show, David. But let's start today by looking at tonight's game. Some good news from the Heat, who are listing only Tyler Hero and Josh Richardson as out for Tuesday night's game against the Knicks. So Duncan Robinson, Nikola Jovic, Caleb Martin, Kevin Love, Jimmy Butler, all these guys that have been dealing with something, they're available. Tyler Hero's ramping up. He should be back at some point this season. David, we've talked a lot about whether or not the Heat could get healthy at the right time. And it appears, at least for now, that with 2 weeks left, that maybe, and if you can't tell I'm hedging a lot here, I might as well just be knocking on wood, maybe they are. What do you make of Miami's latest injury report and whether or not that this team is getting healthy at the right time?
I don't know. A lot could change in 2 weeks, so I'm not making much of it, to be honest with you. I'd like to think that the Heat are getting healthy and that they'll be able to close the season strong. But the reality is that most of these players have been dealing with some kind of nagging injury of some sort. Like the news on Tyler Hero was that he's been dealing with this since his rookie season, right? And again, we can't verify the accuracy of that because we haven't really heard from Tyler or the organization about it. But if he's been dealing with these things, and if Kevin Love, I think that's basically the result of being older. Jimmy Butler, we know what he's going through. Caleb, etc. Like these injuries are going to continue to accrue, and there's a looming matchup perhaps with the New York Knicks in the first round, and that's going to be a very physical, difficult challenge for Miami, and one that could lead to some injuries too. So, I think at this point in the season, injuries do matter in terms of like players being out. If you cannot play at all, like Tyler or Joel Embiid, who we'll talk about a little bit later, that makes a huge difference. But in terms of just being able to tough it out and understand that you've got a challenge ahead, the playoffs are a completely different animal in terms of your availability. You've got to be able to fight through this because it's win or go home. And so I think for the Miami Heat, I think they understand that challenge. I think they're going to be able to accept it, and we'll see how it plays out. I just think there's a lot of possibility that could happen over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You never want to, you never want to look at the gift horse in the mouth of the availability of these players, knowing that it could always change. So to me, I'd rather see them all healthy at the end of the season after they win a trophy.
Well, to get that far, they have to at least be available in the first place. So you're absolutely right that we can't count on this Heat team to ever be healthy for maybe a sustained stretch. But, this is the difficult thing. Like the Heat have been juggling trying to win games and trying to get healthy basically all season. And, it might be enough of a win if they could just be healthy at the right time. Basically 2 weeks from now when the playoffs are starting. There's obviously some big games coming up on the schedule, the games that they have to win. Can they figure out a way to have enough to win those games? Like it almost feels like winning those games is secondary to being healthy, because I would rather have a healthy Heat team in the play-in tournament versus a not healthy Heat team as a 6th seed, right? Because a not healthy Heat team has zero chance. A healthy Heat team at least has a chance. And I know that's very black and white the way I'm painting that, but
yes, it is.
But that's sort of, you got to get healthy to stay healthy, right? And the Heat are at least getting healthy now. And it does feel like, as long as, again, knock on wood, that nobody goes down with something else, that maybe things do snap into place here. We've been talking about swing factors like last year and this year. Like last year, they go from shooting 34% from three-point range in the regular season to 39% in the postseason. Boom. Like, that's the swing factor. That's what fuels their championship run. It wasn't some sort of just magic flipping of a switch. It was literally, hey, the shots just started falling when they weren't falling previously. And I've been trying to think of what can be the thing that flips for this team this year, because I actively push back against the Heat don't care about the regular season. They're just waiting for the postseason thing. I don't believe that to be the case. But if there is going to be a swing factor, it would be something that we haven't seen all year. Like last year, we didn't see all year a team that could make three-point shots consistently, and then they became that team. This year, we haven't seen them healthy all year. Can they be healthy all of a sudden? Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier, Jimmy Butler, Nikola Jovic, and Bam Adebayo, what I imagine is the preferred starting five at this point, hasn't played a single minute together all year. Tyler, Bam, and Jimmy have played only 21 games together this year. Even the three-man group of Terry Rozier, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo, if there's sort of a silver lining on this, is that those three together have outscored their opponents by 5.1 points per 100 possessions. That's according to Cleaning the Glass. That's a good mark. It's good. It's a good team. It's not Celtics good. It's not Milwaukee Bucks. Their best three players good, but it's good. It's good, and we haven't seen a big enough sample of it to really know how good it could possibly be. So we haven't seen what this team can be all year long. And if the Heat were able to take teams by surprise last year, that would be how they would take teams by surprise this year. It would be an opponent all of a sudden being like, oh, this is what a healthy Heat team looks like, because we literally have never seen it before. We haven't seen this team ever healthy.
It sounds so much like the conversations that you were having last year, that we were kind of discussing as we were entering the playoffs last year. The team dealing with injury, dealing with inconsistency. I think even prior to the playoffs, like what's the starting rotation going to be like? Like who comes off the bench? And then, once they actually get past the play-in and Tyler's lost for game one, and there's that cloud hanging over the rest of the team, at that point, you kind of have to figure out what to make of this group. And I don't know, man, to be honest with you, like, I know that the idea of health as the variance makes a lot of sense, but nothing about this Heat team makes any sense whatsoever. So I don't know that you can look at it as something that's a positive factor. Why do you say
that, by the way?
Or any factor at all.
Why do you say nothing about this team makes sense?
Because it doesn't. Because they don't play well, and then they do when it matters. And that they have for the last couple of seasons. They weren't a particularly good first seed a couple of seasons ago. They were a bad team last year, an inconsistent team. They're an inconsistent team this year. I think there's something beyond what we've seen on the floor. I know we keep having this argument in one shape or another. We had our mock trial a couple of weeks ago. This team, there's something else here. And like, we're all looking at health. We're all looking at Tyler, his eventual return. And yet they were able to go all the way to the NBA Finals without Tyler. So I don't know how much health really matters. There's so much this idea, however realistic it might be or unrealistic, that they can just recognize the immensity of their playoff situation and rise to the challenge.
It matters in the sense that, like, it's one thing to be down just one key player. It's another thing to be down like half of your key rotation players, which has been the case. So when you say this team doesn't make sense, like, you're right. Like, this team does not make a whole lot of sense. But in just sort of this team is a few games over 500 and has a lot of talent and is really well coached, but has been injured for most of the year. 5th most games lost due to injury, 35 different starting lineups. We thought they would be better, but they're not. Why? Oh, because they've been injured all year? That makes perfect sense to me, And you're saying, like, what's the thing? There's another level of this team that's unseen. It's the version of this team that's healthy, And so I think you and I agree, like, there's another level of this team. It's just one that's not starting Patty Mills at shooting guard, And so I don't mean to get bogged down in the Tyler Hero stuff, but just getting Duncan Robinson back, getting Nikola Jovic back healthy, getting Kevin Love back, so you're not dealing with the roller coaster of the Thomas Bryant experience. Like, this stuff is huge. This stuff is huge. And then you have all those guys still as potential options coming off the bench.
I like it. I get it. I totally understand it. Again, We were having this conversation last year. Everybody hated goddamn Max Strus and Gabe Vincent. Nobody wanted to see them out onto the floor until they shot 50% in the opening series. Like maybe it's Patty Mills, maybe it's Thomas Bryant. I don't know. I don't think anybody expected Max Strus to go off. I don't think anybody counted on Gabe Vincent being your starting guard against the Milwaukee Bucks, the
But
New York
everybody
Knicks.
agreed they were better players than Patty Mills and DeLon Wright. I mean, we all knew that.
I don't think so. I don't think that was a consensus at all.
I mean, you and I knew that that's true. Whether or not some Joe Schmo knew it, the players
could it beat
matter.
DeLon Wright?
Are you
Could it
telling me
beat
the
DeLon
players
Wright?
don't matter? Because that's
Because
what
now
it
you're gonna
sounds
use
like.
this
It's like
argument
as long
and
as
say
they're wearing,
championship, the draft.
as long as they're wearing
Yes.
the Heat uniform, like it's fine. That's what it sounds like
Yeah,
you're saying. And if you're
I guess
saying that,
unless you're Mo Harkless and Trevor Ariza, I suppose. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, there's something to that. I don't know. Maybe I always recognized that they had potential, but they were all. I'm not saying I was among that lack of consensus in terms of analyzing Gabe and Max and their value. A lot of fans did not like them and want them to be part of the rotation. We were having these conversations up to the play-in tournament, and so I think there's still the possibility that these guys step up. I like something. I know you and I were kind of debating this yesterday. I like something that Eric said in the post game after the Washington Wizards win, and he was asked about the rotation, and he talked about what
it's an all-time spoism. Go ahead.
No. I think the idea of everybody playing and everybody getting ready because you're going to have an opportunity and it's all about contributing to winning basketball. I kind of really think that matters.
Well, you got to say what he said. It's gold.
I don't remember the exact quote.
Spoelstra was asked, what about his playoff rotation? He goes, here's what the rotation is, whatever it takes. It's an incredible, it's a top 3 spoism of all time. And he almost made himself laugh when he said it. If you watch the interview.
Yeah, I think he's in on it. He knows he's got to know how hokey he sounds.
Oh, come on. He's got to have a bet with Pat Riley at like something, right? Like how many weird ways can I work in whatever it takes, or this is competition, or get it out the mud, or like whatever. Like how many different ways can I work in Ignitable into a press conference?
I think there are people that read those kinds of self-help books and the kind of things about self-actualization and everything else, and Spo is at the very top of that list. And so when he really thinks like that you getting minutes in a mid-March game is going to translate into something in the playoffs, I kind of tend to believe him. And so I don't know who it's going to be. It could be, I could see Thomas Bryant having a big game against the Celtics for 15 points. Like that's the kind of a swing factor that there is no way in hell that you'd be able to predict and might actually still happen.
Speaking of injuries, the 76ers could be getting Joel Embiid back at the worst possible time for the Heat. I'm not talking about when these teams play on Thursday. I'll tell you what I'm talking about after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at BetterHelp. We've talked about therapy before, the idea that, you've got something that you want to get off your chest and you want to talk to somebody who is not going to present a biased opinion, because we all have our circle of friends or a coworker or family, somebody that we can talk to perhaps. And if so, they'll give you an opinion, but it might be a biased one, and maybe you don't have somebody that you feel comfortable enough talking to, and you want to just be able to bounce off the idea of whatever it is that's bothering you. If you've got something to get off your chest and you want to talk to somebody, then you might be looking at therapy as an option. And if so, then you should give BetterHelp a try. It's really, really convenient. It's suitable to your schedule. You find somebody, complete a very easy questionnaire, takes a few minutes of your time. You find out exactly what you're looking for. They find out exactly what you're looking for in a therapist, and then they match you up with somebody probably in your area, somebody you can see in person or somebody you can see online or by phone, whatever's most convenient for you. That's all it is. It's about finding somebody that is convenient for you to talk to. So if you're thinking of giving therapy a try, go visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA and you get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Joel Embiid, who has been out with a torn meniscus since January 30th, is expected to return this week. It could be as soon as Tuesday night when the Sixers play the Thunder. Either way, it does appear that he could be playing when the 76ers come to Miami to play the Heat on Thursday. This is huge news, not just for that Thursday game, but also because this is who the Heat would likely face in the 7-8 game of a play-in tournament if they can't climb to 6. But we'll start with this week's game. What are you expecting from Embiid, and how dangerous do you think he makes the Sixers?
That is really difficult to answer because, again, on paper, in a vacuum, however you want to phrase it, like there's no doubt that Embiid is an impactful player. He's an immense physical player. You know exactly where he's going to get his points. He's going to get a lot of them from the line. Although I wonder honestly how the officiating rules will be impacting his level of play, because we've seen players try and embrace that physicality and maybe even sell contact a little bit and get to the line. I think those days are mostly over. So I wonder if Embiid is going to be able to take advantage to the same degree.
Yeah, the Joel stumble might not work as well as it did before he got hurt. Yeah,
exactly. Having said that, the mid-range jumper is still obviously a factor. He's big and strong and quick enough to be able to get past most players. He's going to be able to shoot the three. He's probably working on that. But I also have to think that he's going to be limited to a pretty significant degree. Like, you don't miss this amount of time when players are getting healthy. And his fitness level has always been somewhat questionable to begin with. Although I think most of the buzz about that is somewhat died down now that he's won his MVP and he can stop bitching about it and complaining and pleading to get the votes. So now that he's satisfied that criteria for his career, I don't know. I wonder whether or not he's going to be in the kind of shape where he's immediately as impactful. So I think we're going to see maybe 60% of what we saw prior to his injury, because I think the foul calls aren't going to go his way. I think the fitness level is going to be a problem. And so I wonder how tired. I wonder if there's going to be, I haven't heard anything, I think, any clarification from Nick Nurse or any reporting on any kind of minutes restriction, although I assume logically that there might be some. Having said that, 60% of Joel Embiid is still better than 20-25 starting centers out there. So I think it's going to be a concern for Miami in that now they're going to be winning games that maybe they might not have won without him in the lineup at all. And that makes it much more dangerous to try and continue to stay past them in the chase for the 6th seed to get out of the play-in tournament.
So they're a game and a half over Philly right now for the 7th seed. Philly's in that 8th spot. They can't really go down. Chicago's like 4 games behind them. So Philly's basically locked in at the floor at number 8. Potentially they can get to 7. If they win Thursday, they could still get the tiebreaker, because that would put Miami right now is 2-1 over Philly this year. So
right.
if Miami wins, they get the tiebreaker. And if Philly wins, it goes 2-2 for the season series, and then it goes to conference record. And right now, the Heat have a pretty substantial margin in terms of conference record, 18 conference losses. Philadelphia has 21 conference losses. So the Heat probably still have the tiebreaker, even in the event that Philly wins the game on Thursday night, although that's not necessarily guaranteed, but probable. That said, you don't want to lose ground either, because Philly winning that game, it kind of counts for double there. So you're right. Who knows what he looks like Tuesday night, Thursday night, whenever his first game back. It does look like it's going to be this week. It's probably not even going to be 60% Joel Embiid. He probably will have a minutes restriction, to your point, right? And that's why I'm less concerned about Thursday night, and I'm more concerned about, okay, now Joel Embiid has 2 weeks, 8 games for Philadelphia left, or 7 games left for Philadelphia to ramp up for a play. They're going to be in the play-in tournament one way or the other. And that, if I'm the Heat, gives me, even if I needed any more motivation to get out of the play-in tournament, that's more motivation. Because Joel Embiid on Thursday versus Joel Embiid 2.5 weeks from now is going to look very different. And if he's 60%, the Sixers are out, forget it. And they're still dealing with injuries like the Anthony Melton and some other key parts, like who's an important part of their rotation. But if Embiid is 85% of what he was before the injury, that's still one of the best 10 players in the league. I mean, he was unreal before he got hurt. 35 points per game. I mean, just listen to these stats. The Sixers were 26-8 in games that Joel Embiid was playing. He was averaging 35.3 points per game on 53% shooting, 11.3 rebounds, 5.7 assists. The playmaking for him was at an all-time high. The Sixers had the third best net rating in the league when Joel Embiid was healthy at plus 6.5. They looked every bit the contender. And I think they will be if Joel Embiid is like 85% of what he was. I think that they were that good. And I wouldn't pick them over Boston or Milwaukee or probably even Miami in a series, but it wouldn't surprise anybody if they won those series either if Joel Embiid is playing like that. And so in the context of a play-in tournament, you don't want to run into that guy for one game. Because now if you lose in the 7-8 matchup to Philly, then you have to, of course, play the winner of Chicago-Atlanta to just get in the playoffs. And you're talking about having to play Boston as the 8th seed versus maybe a little bit more of a susceptible team like Milwaukee, or obviously, if you just get out of the play-in tournament altogether and get that 6th seed, you get to play Cleveland. So even more of a reason for me, if I'm Miami, it's either, hey, win enough games, get out, get the 6th seed so you could play the Cavs in the first round, or hey, the play-in tournament, now you got to run into Joel Embiid and then potentially Boston or Milwaukee. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out which route is the easier route.
It just kind of puts in perspective like how damaging those losses, those inexplicable losses early in the season to Washington and others. Like there were just games that Miami should have won. And I know you're going to lose a game here and there over the course of the season. They had extenuating circumstances because of injuries, but you put yourself in such a problem here. It's such a disadvantageous situation where you have to win as many games as possible. Like, even the game just last week against Golden State, like that was a game that Miami should have won despite the loss. They didn't have Jimmy Butler. They didn't have some other players. I get it. You got to figure it out. Like it's just, now you're in a really tough spot and you're facing even greater challenges. And despite that X factor of the confidence, the inherent belief that this team has in itself, you don't want to really be in a place where it comes down to 148-minute game to decide your future and how, if you even get a chance to be in the playoffs. So it's unfortunate that Miami finds themselves in such a similar position as they do last year, but hopefully they have a little bit more of an understanding. We talked about before, they don't care about home court advantage necessarily, but they should care about being able to avoid a play-in tournament because it's just too volatile. Yeah.
And they do care. I mean, they've been on the record saying it. I don't know why. There's this narrative out there that they don't care about the play-in tournament, that they got out of it last year. They didn't want to be in it last year. And Eric Spoelstra said, we don't want to be in the play-in tournament. It's all these quotes get like overlooked. Like it's, oh yeah, he says we have enough and that's cool. But also like this team recognizes that the play-in tournament is not an ideal spot to be in. You're right. It's unstable. The variance, the one game variance, you just don't want to deal with it. I mean, we forget how close the Heat were to just being eliminated by the Bulls in the play-in tournament last year, never having an opportunity to beat the Bucks as the 8th seed in the first round. We were a fourth quarter away from that never even being an option, right? And that wasn't part of the grand plan from Miami. That was by the skin of their teeth for the Heat, And so, I don't know. I think this team is very motivated. I still tend to think they're going to end up with the 6th seed. I still feel pretty bullish about it, and I like how healthy this team is getting right now.
I don't know.
But we'll see. I mean, maybe
we've made some bad predictions before. As the next segment will certainly foretell. So hopefully that is not going to join the list of equally bad predictions.
There's the tease. We're going to revisit our bold predictions from before the season after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. You don't have to download the MLB game app in order to buy tickets or anything like that. You go through Game Time, you find exactly where your seats are going to be. Sometimes you're sitting in a Major League stadium and you don't know, is the foul ball going to be an obstruction? Where are you going to be sitting on the first base line or third base line? Where are you going to get those tickets that are going to make that experience so memorable as you go to your first Major League Baseball game? Well, guess what? Game Time gives you that options. It's so convenient. It just takes seconds to find the tickets that you're looking for, and you get the greatest deal available. You get the best prices possible using Game Time. You can use that app to see exactly where you'll be sitting in the stadium, so you can see whether or not you're going to have a clear view of home plate, etc. Whatever you're looking for in terms of whatever seats you might be looking for, Game Time will help you figure it out. But not just games, not just Major League Baseball games, concerts, comedy shows, whatever you're looking for, any kind of show that you might possibly be getting tickets for. Well, guess what? You'll find them at a discounted price on Game Time. So download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the code LOCKDOWNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. Imagine that, getting tickets for an event that you might be interested in going to, and you get $20 off paying that price. That's great. Terms do apply, but again, you create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONBA. That's LOCKEDONBA. You get $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. This Friday night, watch party. Hosted by Locked On Heat at the Taurus in Coconut Grove. Heat Rockets game starts 8 p.m. 2-for-1 draft beers. 2-for-1 well drinks. And
I'm going to make a prediction.
2-for-1 Locked On Heat hosts,
I'm going to make a prediction right now, and I'm hoping it will be part of our wrong. I'm thinking nobody's going to show up. You know what? I think no one's going to show up. I think it's going to be you and me, me and you watching the big screen over there at Taurus, and nobody's going to be there. We're drinking our sorrows as nobody shows up. I'm hoping that'll be the worst prediction that we've made all year. Prove us wrong, everybody.
For Wes Heads to prove David wrong, and for David Heads to prove Wes wrong. That's what we live for here. Quick update. OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, both out for the Knicks game on Tuesday night. Mitchell Robinson's questionable with a sprained ankle. Man, he cannot get right, that guy. But good news for the Heat on the health front. Let's get into revisiting those bold predictions we made for the season. So I went back. I found our bold predictions, David. I got them right here. We'll just get right into it. You and I both predicted that Bam was going to win Defensive Player of the Year. We are going to be wrong on that. This looks like a 3-person race and probably a 1-person race. It's like Rudy Gobert is going to get it. Maybe there's going to be some votes for Victor Wembanyama. I would imagine maybe there's a couple of votes coming out of New Orleans for Herb Jones. But,
is he the third name? You think he surpassed Bam in terms of overall voting?
So let's see. What does FanDuel have now?
I think he's more like a niche vote. I think we haven't seen perimeter players other than Marcus Smart. We haven't really seen perimeter players get that kind of recognition before.
Yeah, you're right.
Not that they're not deserving.
There would be some LA votes for Anthony Davis. So Rudy Gobert's number is the odds-on favorite from FanDuel, and then it's Wembanyama, then it's Anthony Davis, then it's Bam Adebayo, and then it's Jared Allen. So those are the guys that FanDuel even has. Like, that's it. That's the 5. Jared Allen?
Jared Allen.
I mean, he's fine.
Yeah, he's been solid. Yeah, he's been solid.
Cleveland, they're not getting any people winning awards. Anyway, but I wouldn't be. Yeah, those are kind of the names. But this seems like it's Rudy Gobert's to lose, and it's probably Victor Wembanyama's to lose for the next 10 years. So you and I were wrong on that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
You and I both predicted that the Heat were going to get 2 All-Stars this year. Yeah, we were half right. They got 1 All-Star this year.
Yeah. Do you have a sound effect to go with this? I don't know, not the air horns necessarily, but like a sound buzzer. Like choice is wrong. There we go.
So I predicted that it would be Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. You predicted bolder take that it would be Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. We were both wrong.
I really thought he was up there. I thought this was, and look, he looked great to start the season.
Hey, I
thought he was gonna. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Who knows?
You predicted that Kyle Lowry was not going to get traded.
Yes.
I predicted that he was going to get traded. So I win that one.
Well, I think my argument at the time is and was still sound. Like, I think, the idea of having to attach another asset, another player, or a trade or a draft pick was not something that the Heat looked to be interested in doing. But I think they recognized I think Kyle was more passive than they expected him to be to start the season. Like, he was fine in terms of overall whatever he was contributing, but his lack of scoring was such a problem that they had to make a move. And as this potential window is closing, you want to be able to capitalize on that expiring contract now. So I don't know. I still stand by that argument, and just didn't play out that way.
He got traded, right?
I do know that. I
Okay.
do know that. I'm aware that Terry Rozier is on the roster, but I still think it's a good sound argument. If I go back
So
and
that
listen
wasn't
to it,
really
I'll
your
be like,
argument.
yeah,
Your argument was that that he was going to be good enough that they didn't want to trade him.
damn, I screwed the pooch on that one, didn't I?
Have you listened to the
Whoa.
episode? That wasn't even your argument. You tried to rewrite history there. Fact checked. Got fact checked. The last one was so I'm not even gonna count this one against you because I bailed out on my last prediction. We went basically 3 for 3. I bailed out on my last prediction right before the show ended when we did it. You gave me your final prediction, so I bailed out on mine, which was I was gonna predict. It sounded like at least who was gonna win the play-in or the in-season tournament, and I got really frustrated with the whole in-season tournament process, and I thought it was a stupid idea, and I just bailed on the prediction.
I do remember that. I do
You
remember. Yeah, you hated it.
you had like a weird fake, like you had more of like a statement than it was a prediction. You just said that Miami's 3-point shooting is going to be dependent on Kevin Love. Building on like last regular season, the 3-point shooting wasn't very good. And you basically said that the Heat's 3-point shooting performance will go as Kevin Love goes, essentially. So I don't know whether you're right or wrong because Kevin Love has been a better 3-point shooter this year than he was last year for the Heat. But Kevin Love is shooting 34% from 3-point range, and the Heat are shooting 37% from 3-point range this year. So I don't know if you meant like a direct correlation in terms of like they'll have their same percentage. It was unclear what you meant by it. I'm going to give you the W for it because you were generally right. So you
Yes.
get a win on that one.
I think it's more about that X factor of like being able to get 3-point shooting off the bench. We were talking about Jaime. He wasn't a shooter, or at least he has regressed, unfortunately. Haywood Highsmith was a bit of a concern. I don't think anybody saw the Duncan Renaissance taking place this year. If anybody accurately foresaw that, and there's any way of proving that, I'd love to see
That'd be
it.
a
But I
great
don't think
prediction.
anybody. Yeah, I don't think anybody could have
I
expected.
I
it to
hear
go
what
this
you're
way.
saying, and Kevin Love is a proven 3-point shooter who had a career low in Miami last year and came and you kind of expected some sort of bounce back this year. I just don't think it was a prediction. I think it was a good observation. I think it was sound analysis, but it wasn't like Kevin Love is going to make 100 threes this year. That's a prediction. So I don't know
Oh,
why I let you off the hook on that one, but I'm giving you the one. I'm giving you the win. So
that's fair. I'll take it.
yeah,
Whatever.
you were just
I'm like
vague
the Heat.
enough to get credit.
Oh, just like the Heat. Any win will count at this point.
Right, that's right.
That's a
We'll take 'em.
business-like decision on my
Right.
part.
Hey, beggars can't be choosers in the last 8 games of the season.
Damn right.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your podcast app.